The desert's silence is a perfect lie. Beneath the rolling sands and under the blistering sun, the earth keeps astonishing secrets. We are about to uncover 25 of them. This is a journey to the world's most ancient and arid landscapes, where we will find clues to vanished cities, technologies that defy explanation, and natural phenomena that still baffle our brightest minds. By the end, you will possess a collection of mysteries that rewrite history and challenge what we know about human ingenuity. How did an entire Persian army disappear without a trace? Could a clay jar from Baghdad be proof of ancient electricity? The stories waiting in the dunes are far stranger than fiction. What do you believe is the desert's most closely guarded secret? Our journey begins with a city that should not exist. The legend of Iram of the Pillars is woven from equal parts history, scripture, and fear. Ancient Arabian tales speak of a magnificent metropolis built by a tribe called the Ad, a people of immense power and wealth. They carved their home from the very heart of the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, the largest continuous sand desert on earth. Their city, Iram, was said to be adorned with towering pillars and glittering treasures, a testament to human ambition in a place designed to reject life. But their story is a cautionary one. According to the Quran, the people of Ad grew arrogant, turning away from faith. As divine punishment, their magnificent city was erased from the earth, buried beneath a roaring, sand-choked wind that lasted for 7 nights and 8 days. The desert did not just conquer Iram, it consumed it utterly, leaving no path for the lost and no trace for the curious. For centuries, it was considered a myth, a moral fable about hubris. That changed in the early 1990s when a team using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar identified a series of ancient caravan routes in southern Oman. These pathways, invisible from the ground, all converged on a single point in the desert. Explorers, including the famed Ranulph Fiennes, investigated the site and found remnants of a large settlement with evidence of towers and fortifications, now known as Ubar. The discovery was heralded as the possible location of the fabled Iram, yet the mystery only deepened. The archaeological evidence, while compelling, is fragmentary. Was this truly the City of Pillars, or merely another wealthy trading hub lost to time? The desert guards its truths jealously. Shifting sands rebury findings almost as quickly as they are uncovered, and the sheer scale of the empty quarter makes a comprehensive search nearly impossible. So the secret remains. We have a legend, we have a potential location, but we lack the final, undeniable thread that connects them. Iram persists as a ghost in the dunes, a powerful reminder that the desert's greatest treasures are often its most elusive stories. But a lost city is just one kind of ghost in the sand. Far to the west, in the coastal desert of southern Peru, an entire landscape became a canvas for giants. Here on the arid plains of Nazca, the earth itself is etched with secrets on a scale that defies human comprehension. This is our second secret, the Nazca Lines. Scattered across nearly 200 square miles of desolate plateau are hundreds of immense geoglyphs, lines and shapes carved into the dark desert surface to reveal the lighter soil beneath. From the ground, you see only shallow grooves and strange pathways, but from the air, the truth reveals itself. A colossal hummingbird, its wingspan stretching over 300 feet. A spider perfectly proportioned, longer than a football field. A monkey with an extravagantly curled tail. There are spirals, trapezoids, and straight lines that run for miles, arrows straight across hills and valleys. The precision is breathtaking, and it presents the central mystery. These works of art were created between 2,000 and 1,500 years ago by the Nazca people. They had no hot air balloons, no drones, no aircraft of any kind. So how did they design and execute such massive, perfect figures without ever seeing their own work from above? The leading theory is one of simple, brilliant engineering. Archaeologists believe the Nazca used scaled-down designs, perhaps drawn on small plots of land, and then employed a system of stakes and ropes to transfer the proportions to the monumental scale we see today. By clearing the dark, sun-baked stones from the surface, they exposed the lighter, clay-rich soil underneath, creating lines that have endured for millennia in one of the driest places on Earth. But the why is just as compelling as the how. Were these giant drawings an astronomical calendar aligning with solstices and constellations? Perhaps they were ritual pathways walked by priests during ceremonies to plead with the gods for the most precious desert resource, water. The spider, for instance, is a symbol of rain in some Andean cultures, and the hummingbird is linked to fertility. The lines may have been a desperate, beautiful prayer etched into the skin of the earth, a permanent offering to deities who controlled the rains. And just when we think we are beginning to understand, the desert reveals more. In recent years, using drones and advanced satellite imaging, researchers have discovered hundreds of new Nazca Lines, many depicting humanoid figures and other more abstract forms. This discovery proves the site is far larger and more complex than we ever imagined. The mystery is not shrinking with time, it is actively growing, expanding its cryptic footprint across the Peruvian plain. Each new line is another question without an answer, another piece of a puzzle we are only just learning how to see. The same desert that preserves giant drawings can also hide a single man completely. For our third secret, we move from a public prayer etched in stone to a private grave cloaked in absolute secrecy, the lost tomb of Genghis Khan. His story is the stuff of legend, a nomadic warrior who united the Mongol tribes and forged the largest contiguous empire in human history. Yet when he died in 1227, his final wish was not for a grand monument but for utter obscurity. According to the accounts, his funeral procession was an act of terrifying finality. The soldiers charged with burying him killed every person they encountered on their journey, ensuring no living witness could betray the location. Then, after the burial was complete, the soldiers themselves were allegedly killed by another detachment of warriors. Finally, 1,000 horses were said to have been stampeded over the site, trampling the earth flat and erasing any trace. It was the ultimate security protocol, turning a grave into a ghost. So where could such a secret be kept? The prime suspect for centuries has been the vast and formidable Gobi Desert, a landscape within his homeland that is as unforgiving as it is empty. Its shifting dunes and remote mountains provide a perfect natural vault. The logic is compelling. Where better to hide a world-changing secret than in a place that actively resists exploration? Modern treasure hunters and scientists have taken up the challenge, armed with tools the ancient Mongols could never have conceived. Expeditions have employed satellite imagery to scan for unnatural formations across thousands of square miles. They have used ground-penetrating radar to peer beneath the sand, searching for the telltale signature of a hidden chamber. There have been tantalizing hints, potential sites around the sacred Burkhan Koldun mountain, but no definitive proof. Yet the greatest obstacle is not technological, it is cultural. For many Mongolians, Genghis Khan is not just a historical figure, he is a near-sacred ancestor. Disturbing his tomb is seen as a profound desecration, an act that could bring spiritual calamity. This deep reverence has led to legal protections and a powerful reluctance to dig. So the desert guards this secret with a dual lock, one of brutal, ancient security and enduring modern respect. The tomb of the world's greatest conqueror remains perhaps his final and most complete victory over discovery. He rests somewhere in the silence of the Gobi, a secret so well kept that even the land itself seems sworn to silence. Genghis Khan's hidden tomb proves the desert is a master of concealment, but what happens when it deliberately reveals a pattern, one so vast it can only be seen from the sky? This brings us to our fourth secret, a discovery so new it is still being catalogued, the unexplained stone structures of Saudi Arabia. For millennia, the deserts of northwest Arabia were thought to be empty, barren stretches crossed only by nomadic tribes. That assumption has been shattered by the modern eye in the sky. Aerial surveys using helicopters and satellites have uncovered a staggering archaeological landscape, a network of ancient stone monuments numbering in the thousands. The most prominent among them are called mustatils, an Arabic word meaning rectangles, and these are not small enclosures. These are colossal geometric forms, some stretching over 1,500 feet in length, built from low stone walls that often stand no higher than a person's chest. From the ground, they appear as meandering lines of rock, almost random. But from above, their perfect rectangular and gate-like shapes snap into focus, a giant's blueprint etched across the desert floor. Their purpose is a compelling puzzle. These structures are profoundly old, dating back more than 7,000 years to a time when the Arabian Peninsula was greener, a land of lakes and grasslands roamed by herds of animals. One leading theory suggests they were ritual sites, perhaps used for communal gatherings and animal sacrifices. Archaeologists have found chambers within some mustatils containing offerings of cattle horns and skulls, hinting at a spiritual practice centered on a deity or a force of nature. Another idea is that they served as territorial markers for Neolithic herders, defining grazing lands or meeting points across a vast, open landscape. Their sheer size and numbers suggest a level of social organization we never attributed to the people of this region in that era. They required coordinated labor, a shared plan, and a common purpose that united groups across enormous distances. What these silent stone rectangles truly rewrite is our understanding of prehistoric life. This was not a desolate backwater, but a hub of cultural activity. The mustatils form a kind of primitive social network made of rock, connecting communities in a shared architectural language. They tell us that the people of ancient Arabia were not just surviving in this environment, they were shaping it, imprinting their beliefs and their social structures onto the very earth in a way meant to last. And with each new flyover, more structures are found, more questions are asked. Each rectangle is a door to a lost world, and we are only just beginning to turn the handle. The silent stones of Arabia are not the only desert sentinels keeping watch over forgotten peoples. Far to the east, in one of the most hostile deserts on the planet, the dead have begun to speak with startling clarity. Our fifth secret lies in the heart of the Taklamakan Desert in western China, a place whose very name translates ominously to the place of no return, or more poetically, the Sea of Death. It is a shifting ocean of sand dunes, a landscape that has swallowed entire caravans and guarded its secrets with lethal dryness. Yet it was here, along its ancient, desiccated edges, that archaeologists made a discovery that upended the history books, the Iram mummies. In the late 1980s, explorers began uncovering graves in the parched soil. When they opened them, they did not find skeletons but people. The extreme aridity and salty soil of the Taklamakan had created a perfect natural preservative, mummifying the bodies in exquisite detail. These individuals, dating back nearly 4,000 years to the Bronze Age, looked as if they had merely fallen asleep. Their hair, their eyelashes, the fine lines on their skin were all perfectly intact, but it was their faces that caused a global sensation. They had high noses, deep-set eyes, and light-colored hair. They were unmistakably Caucasian. This was a profound historical puzzle. Here, in the remote western reaches of China, long before the famous Silk Road, was a population of Europeans. They were dressed not in silks, but in beautifully crafted woolen garments that felt strangely familiar. They wore tall, conical felt hats that would not look out of place in a medieval European market. Some were clothed in tunics of tartan-patterned cloth, a weaving technique we deeply associate with the Celts of the British Isles. One famous mummy, a woman dubbed the Beauty of Lulan, was buried with a finely woven basket and a simple comb, personal items that made her feel hauntingly immediate. Their presence forces us to redraw the map of early human movement. The standard narrative held that East and West were largely separate worlds until the Silk Road connected them over 2,000 years ago. The Iram mummies prove that connection happened much earlier. These were not mere travelers, they were a settled, thriving culture. Evidence from their graves shows they raised cattle and sheep, grew wheat and millet, and had sophisticated weaving and metalworking skills. They lived in oases around the Taklamakan, islands of life in the Sea of Death, and they built a unique society that blended technologies and traditions from both ends of Eurasia. The desert's cruel climate, which made their survival a daily struggle, is precisely what granted them immortality. The absolute dryness halted decay, freezing them and their material culture in time. They are not just mummies, they are a time capsule of an entire way of life, a lost Bronze Age world that flourished in the most unlikely of places. Their very existence whispers a secret the sands have held for millennia, that the ancient world was far more interconnected and far more surprising than we ever dared to believe. Who were these people, and what stories did they carry with them to the ends of the earth? The answer lies woven into the very fabric of their tartan cloaks, waiting in the silent, dry dark. While the Iram mummies were preserved by a gentle, dry cold, another desert secret was forged in a single instant of unimaginable fire. Scattered across the Great Sand Sea, a vast ocean of dunes straddling Egypt and Libya, lies a treasure that looks like it fell from the sun. This is our sixth secret, the enigma of Libyan desert glass. Picture, if you will, a landscape of pure, scorching gold. Not sand, but fields of shattered, translucent glass glittering under the African sky. These are not the remnants of an ancient civilization, no bottles or windows left behind. This is natural silica glass, a substance so pure and so strange it should not exist here. To create natural glass of this quality, you need two things: sand and a heat source so intense it defies belief. The sand here is almost pure silica, the main ingredient in glass. But the heat required to fuse it instantly into this smooth, canary yellow substance is staggering, far beyond any volcano or wildfire this region has ever known. So what force in Earth's ancient past could have turned hundreds of square miles of desert into a shattered crystal floor? The leading theory points to the heavens. Scientists believe the most likely culprit is a cosmic cataclysm, a meteorite or comet that met its end in a spectacular airburst above the desert. Imagine a rock from space, perhaps 120 feet across, screaming through the atmosphere. The friction and pressure would cause it to explode before it even hit the ground, unleashing a fireball with the temperature of the surface of the sun. This superheated blast would have slammed into the sand below, instantly melting the top layer into a searing liquid that then cooled into the glass we find today. It would have been an event of biblical proportions, a flash of light brighter than 1,000 suns, followed by a shockwave that scoured the landscape. But there is a competing and even more dramatic hypothesis. Some researchers argue the glass might be the product of a ground impact, the actual strike of a comet rich in ice. The theory suggests the combination of the immense kinetic energy and the vaporizing ice could have created a unique, high-temperature steam bath that melted the sand in a way a dry explosion could not. The debate is fierce because the evidence on the ground is maddeningly incomplete. No large impact crater has been definitively linked to the glass fields. Did the cosmic body explode so high that it left no crater, or has the relentless desert simply buried the evidence under mountains of shifting sand over millions of years? This mystery became human history when one particular piece of this glass found its way onto the chest of a pharaoh. In the tomb of King Tutankhamun, archaeologists discovered a stunning pectoral jewel. At its heart was a scarab beetle carved not from emerald or jade, but from a single, polished piece of Libyan desert glass. The ancient Egyptian artisans over 3,000 years ago recognized this material as something precious and otherworldly. To them, it was likely a stone that fell from the sky, a gift from the sun god Ra himself. perfect for protecting a king on his journey to the afterlife. So this desert glass is more than a geological oddity. It is a timestamp of apocalypse. It represents a single, terrifying moment, a day when the sky fell and the desert floor turned to fire. We hold pieces of that event in our hands, glittering fragments of a force so powerful it still whispers to us across the ages. What other cataclysms are hidden, perfectly preserved in the world's great sands? The desert's capacity for preservation is matched only by its power to consume, a truth made violently literal in a place where the ground itself has been on fire for half a century. Our seventh secret is not ancient, but it is no less a mystery born of the sands, the terrifying and mesmerizing door to hell. In the heart of the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, a crater over 200 feet wide glows with an unearthly orange light. Flames dance perpetually from its depths, a roaring pit of fire that has burned without pause since 1971. This is not a volcano or a natural gas seep, but a spectacular monument to a colossal human mistake. Soviet geologists, drilling for what they hoped was a vast oil field, instead punctured a cavern filled with highly pressurized natural gas. The ground beneath their rig catastrophically collapsed, swallowing their equipment and creating a gaping maw that began spewing methane, a dangerous and potent greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. Faced with an environmental and safety disaster, they made a fateful calculation. They decided to set the gas on fire, believing it would burn off safely within a matter of weeks. The desert had other plans. The fire did not die. It found a fuel source far larger than anyone anticipated, a subsurface reservoir of natural gas so extensive it has fed the flames for over 50 years. The crater, officially called the Darvaza gas crater but known to all as the door to hell, became a permanent fixture, a man-made star fallen to the desert floor. Scientifically, it is a furnace of fascinating contradictions. The rim is a scorched, barren zone, but just beyond it, in soil superheated by the crater's radiant energy, scientists have discovered something astonishing: extremophile microbes. These microscopic life forms thrive in the intense heat, in conditions that would instantly kill almost any other organism on Earth. Studying these hardy microbes offers clues about the potential for life in similarly hostile environments on other planets, turning an industrial accident into an accidental laboratory for astrobiology. Yet the crater's greatest secret is its enduring, unintended legacy. What began as a failed engineering project has become a modern desert legend, a tourist attraction that draws the brave and the curious to stand at the edge of a literal hellscape. It is a stark, blazing reminder of humanity's power to alter a landscape in an instant, and of nature's stubborn refusal to conform to our timelines. The fire was supposed to be a temporary solution, a controlled burn. Instead, it created a permanent question, a beacon in the dark that asks us, how long will it burn? And what other unforeseen consequences lie buried, waiting for a single misstep to set them alight? Fire is a desert's most dramatic transformation, but water is its most precious secret. Deep within the rose-red mountains of southern Jordan, a civilization mastered this truth with an ingenuity that still echoes through stone. This is the eighth secret, the hidden water system of Petra. To the modern visitor, Petra is a spectacle of facades, the iconic treasury carved with impossible elegance into a cliff face. But the true wonder of this city is not what you see, it is what you cannot see, the labyrinth of channels, pipes, and cisterns that turned a barren canyon into a thriving metropolis. The Nabateans, the nomadic Arab tribe who built Petra over 2,000 years ago, faced a brutal paradox. Their chosen home was in the heart of a desert, yet it was prone to violent, sudden flash floods that could scour a canyon clean in minutes. Their genius was not in fighting the desert's nature, but in harnessing it. They engineered the entire city as a massive water catchment and distribution system. First, they tamed the floods. They carved diversion dams and tunnels high in the surrounding hills to intercept the torrential water before it could rage through the city's main street, the Sick. These channels gently redirected the floodwaters into a network of underground cisterns, some large enough to hold thousands of gallons. Then they distributed it with precision. Terracotta pipes, some still visible embedded in the canyon walls, carried water under pressure to public fountains, luxurious private villas, and even to the high places of sacrifice. Every rooftop was a catchment area, every street had a channel, and massive, bell-shaped cisterns were carved directly into the bedrock beneath homes and temples. This was not mere survival, it was opulence in the desert. Their control of water was the absolute source of their wealth and power. Petra sat at the crossroads of major incense trade routes. Caravans of camels, weary from weeks in the desert, would arrive at this canyon oasis to find not just a safe haven, but a city of gardens, baths, and flowing pools. The Nabateans could offer what every traveler desperately needed, a guaranteed drink. They essentially sold security and refreshment, taxing the trade that flowed through their gates and using their hydraulic engineering to support a population that may have reached 30,000 people. The system was so advanced, so seamlessly integrated into the natural rock, that when the Romans eventually annexed the kingdom, they left the Nabatean waterworks largely intact, recognizing a technology they could not improve upon. And then the secret was lost. Earthquakes damaged the delicate channels, trade routes shifted, and knowledge of the system faded as Petra itself was abandoned to the sands. For centuries, the city was remembered only for its beautiful, empty tombs. It was not until modern archaeologists began following the subtle grooves in the rock, tracing the paths that did not lead to temples but to reservoirs, that the city's true heart was rediscovered. Petra's grandeur was not carved from the cliffside, it was channeled from the sky. Every drop of unpredictable rain was captured, controlled, and converted into life and empire. Their greatest monument was not a temple to the gods, but a testament to human ingenuity, a hidden machine of stone that turned the desert's greatest threat into its most profound gift. Yet the most perfect illusions are not carved in stone, but painted on the air itself. Across the endless expanse of the Sahara, a different kind of secret taunts the senses, a phantom world that appears with cruel clarity only to vanish as you approach. This is the ninth secret, the Fata Morgana mirage, a phenomenon so convincing it has rewritten maps and shattered minds. Unlike the common shimmering puddle on the road, a Fata Morgana is a complex superior mirage, an elaborate optical trick performed by the desert atmosphere. It occurs when layers of air of drastically different temperatures stack upon each other, like invisible sheets of glass. The scorching sand heats the air just above it, creating a thin, less dense layer. Above that, the air remains cooler and denser. Light traveling through this boundary bends or refracts, curving downward toward the cooler, denser air. To your eye, this bent light appears to be coming from a straight line, projecting a displaced image of something far beyond the horizon, a distant mountain range, a city, a body of water, and lifting it into the sky, often in a distorted, inverted, or magnified form. The result is not a blur, but a startlingly sharp vision. A caravan might see a floating island with castles in the clouds. A sailor in a desert-adjacent sea could witness an entire ghost ship sailing through the dunes. These are not hallucinations of a thirsty mind, but precise, physical deceptions crafted by physics. History is littered with their victims. For centuries, explorers chasing the myth of a vast inland sea in the Sahara or the location of a legendary golden city were often following these spectral images. The myth of the Flying Dutchman, the ghost ship doomed to sail the seas forever, likely has its roots in Fata Morgana mirages seen by superstitious sailors. In the desert, a lone traveler might spend days marching toward a lush, beckoning oasis, only to watch it dissolve into waves of heat, leaving nothing but barren rock and a crushing despair. The mirage does not just fool the eye, it preys on hope. The most powerful aspect of this secret is its ability to blend reality and illusion seamlessly. Sometimes the mirage is not a pure invention, but a distorted reflection of a real place dozens of miles away. A remote mountain range can appear magnified and brought startlingly close, seeming like an accessible refuge. This blurring of the line is what makes the Fata Morgana so psychologically potent. When your eyes report undeniable proof of water or shelter, but your feet find only more sand, the very foundation of perception crumbles. In the emptiness of the desert, where the mind already battles isolation and extremity, these phantom visions can become a tipping point. They have driven rational men to madness, convincing them they were cursed or blessed, that they had found paradise or were being led to their doom by malicious spirits. The desert, in its silent way, possesses a weapon far more subtle than heat or thirst, the power to make you doubt your own senses, to make you question what is truly real in a landscape where nothing is as it seems. While mirages trick the eyes, some desert secrets are locked within pages no one can read. The 10th secret is a book, but not just any book. It is the Voynich manuscript, a 240-page codex that has defied every attempt at translation for over a century. Written in an elegant, looping script that belongs to no known language, it is filled with illustrations of plants that do not exist, naked women bathing in strange green liquid, and astrological charts of fantastical constellations. It is, by consensus, the world's most mysterious book. Carbon dating places its vellum pages in the early 15th century, likely in northern Italy, but its origins and purpose are a complete enigma. That is, unless you look closely at the drawings and follow the clues to an unexpected desert. A controversial but compelling theory suggests the key to the Voynich may lie not in Europe, but in the arid landscapes of the New World. Some researchers, scrutinizing the hundreds of botanical drawings, argue that several plants bear a striking resemblance to species native to the Sonoran Desert, a vast region spanning what is now northern Mexico and the southwestern United States. One illustration appears to depict a prickly pear cactus, complete with its distinctive paddle-shaped pads and red fruit. Another looks remarkably like a soap tree yucca, with its tall flowering stalk and cluster of white blossoms. A third could be a species of wild gourd that grows in those dry lands. If this identification is correct, it is a historical earthquake. The Voynich manuscript would contain accurate illustrations of American desert plants decades before Columbus's voyage in 1492. This would mean the artist or their source had first-hand knowledge of a continent Europe did not yet officially know existed. How is that possible? Proponents of the theory weave a tantalizing, if speculative, narrative. They point to pre-Columbian transatlantic contact, perhaps through Viking expeditions that traveled down the coast, or through unknown voyages by other European or even Asian explorers who landed in the Americas, observed the unique flora, and brought that knowledge back with them. The desert, in this scenario, becomes the silent author of the manuscript's most baffling section. The Sonoran Desert's unique and resilient plants, so alien to a European eye, would have been worthy of meticulous recording by any curious traveler. This theory does not solve the manuscript, it deepens the mystery exponentially. It adds a transatlantic layer to an already impenetrable puzzle. Who were these hypothetical travelers, and why did they encode their observations in an unbreakable cipher? Were they protecting valuable geographical knowledge, or was this the work of a scholar trying to make sense of a world that defied all contemporary understanding? The desert flora, if that is truly what we are seeing, becomes a ghostly fingerprint. It is a silent, biological witness to a journey history forgot, its image captured in cryptic ink on a page that refuses to speak. The Voynich manuscript remains a locked door, but this theory suggests the key might have been forged under a blistering, foreign sun in a desert halfway across the world. The stone itself holds a different story, one written not by pharaohs but by rain. Towering over the Giza Plateau, the Great Sphinx presents a face familiar to the world, yet its body whispers a secret that challenges everything we think we know about its age. Mainstream Egyptology firmly places its construction during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, around 2,500 years before the Common Era. The logic seems sound. It sits adjacent to Khafre's pyramid complex, and its face is often thought to bear a resemblance to his statues. But in the early 1990s, a geologist named Robert Schoch looked past the face and focused on the body, on the deep, undulating grooves that carve into the limestone core. To his trained eye, these were not the marks of wind and sand. Wind and sand erosion creates horizontal, scouring patterns like the marks left by a steady, abrasive hand. The Sphinx, however, bears deep vertical fissures and rolling, wave-like channels, particularly in the walls of the enclosure carved out around it. Schoch argued this was the unmistakable signature of water, specifically heavy, prolonged rainfall that poured down over millennia, dissolving the soft limestone and cutting those distinctive runnels. And here lies the revolutionary and controversial heart of the secret. That kind of significant, sustained rainfall has not occurred in Egypt since the end of the last ice age, a period geologists call the Neolithic subpluvial, which ended around 10,000 years before the Common Era. If the water erosion theory is correct, the core body of the Sphinx must be far, far older than the 4th dynasty, potentially dating back to a time when the Sahara was not a desert at all, but a green savanna crisscrossed by rivers. This theory suggests the Sphinx as we know it might be a remodel, that a much older, weathered monument was later recarved and given the face of a pharaoh thousands of years after its initial creation. Mainstream Egyptologists counter with powerful arguments. They point to other 4th dynasty structures showing similar weathering, suggesting the local limestone is simply prone to exfoliation from morning dew and occasional rain, combined with the effects of thermal expansion and salt crystallization. They also argue there is no archaeological evidence, no tools, no settlements, no cultural continuity to support a sophisticated civilization capable of such a massive carving project in Egypt that far back in time. The debate is a profound clash between disciplines, between the timelines read from pottery shards and royal cartouches, and the story told by the very rock. It forces a haunting question: could the Sphinx be a relic from a forgotten epoch, a monument built by a culture lost to the sands of time, whose name we do not know and whose achievements have been entirely erased? The secret is locked in the stone, a coded message from a wetter world, waiting for the moment when we finally learn how to read it correctly. Herodotus told a story that feels less like history and more like a warning. In the year 525 before the Common Era, the mighty Persian king Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, ruled an empire that stretched from the Indus River to the Nile. But his ambition had a limit, and that limit was a sacred oasis deep in the Libyan desert. Cambyses, according to the Greek historian, demanded that the priests of the Oracle of Ammon at the Siwa oasis submit to his authority. When they refused, his pride could not abide it. He dispatched an army of 50,000 men, a formidable force with a single mission: march across hundreds of miles of barren desert and reduce the temple to dust. The army set out from the city of Thebes. For a time, messengers reported their progress. Then the report stopped. The 50,000 soldiers, their equipment, their animals, every single soul simply vanished. Herodotus records the local explanation. A massive, screaming sandstorm rose from the south, a simoom of such ferocity that it buried the entire army alive, leaving no sign they had ever existed. The desert had swallowed an army whole. For centuries, this was considered a dramatic fable, a lesson about hubris and the unforgiving power of the sands. But what if it was not a myth? The search for the lost army of Cambyses has become one of archaeology's great desert quests. The scale of the challenge is staggering. The Sahara is immense, and shifting dunes can cover a city, let alone a military camp, in a matter of years. Yet, tantalizing clues have surfaced. In the late 1990s, a team led by archaeologists twin brothers Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione announced a breathtaking find in the vast Great Sand Sea, west of the Siwa oasis. They reported discovering a mass of weathered human bones, fragments of corroded bronze weapons, and what appeared to be a silver bracelet of Achaemenid Persian design. They believed they had found the remnants of the lost army, scattered and buried. The discovery sparked immediate controversy. Mainstream Egyptologists were deeply skeptical. They questioned the methods, the location, and the artifacts. No definitive Persian inscriptions were found, and the harsh desert environment makes precise dating of metal objects exceptionally difficult. Could these bones and bronze pieces be from a much later Roman caravan that met a similar fate, or from nomadic tribes? The Castiglione stood by their findings, arguing the volume and nature of the material pointed to a large, organized group meeting a sudden, catastrophic end. The debate highlights the core of this secret. Even if we found the army, how would we ever truly know it was Cambyses's? The desert is a master of anonymizing its victims. Sand blasts away identifying marks, sun bleaches bones beyond recognition, and time scatters the evidence. The story persists because it speaks to a primal fear, the idea that the earth itself can erase human endeavor on a colossal scale. It is the ultimate cautionary tale. A king at the height of his power issues an order against nature itself, and nature responds with an indifferent, absolute finality. The lost army remains a ghost in the historical record, a haunting possibility suspended between fact and legend. It forces us to wonder, are we still searching for an army, or are we searching for proof that some forces, even today, remain beyond the reach of any empire? Power is often hidden in the most unassuming of containers. In the 1930s, near the outskirts of modern-day Baghdad, workers excavating for a railway uncovered a collection of peculiar clay jars. They were not ornate or inscribed with royal seals. They were simple, about the size of a man's hand, sealed with asphalt and dated to the Parthian or Sasanian period, anywhere from 250 years before the Common Era to 650 years after. But inside one of these jars, archaeologists found an arrangement that sent a jolt through our understanding of antiquity. The jar contained a rolled copper cylinder, carefully soldered with a lead and tin alloy. Suspended inside this cylinder, insulated from it by more asphalt, was an iron rod. When the jar was filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or fermented grape juice, something remarkable happened. This simple assembly became a primitive chemical battery capable of generating a small but measurable electric current, just over 1 volt. The implications are electrifying in every sense of the word. Could the ancients have harnessed a force we believe was discovered millennia later? The debate around the Baghdad battery is a perfect storm of tantalizing possibility and frustrating ambiguity. One compelling theory suggests it was used for electroplating, the process of using electricity to coat one metal with a thin layer of another, like gold or silver. Artisans of the time were masters of gilding, and a small, consistent current from such a cell could have provided a more controlled method than the known chemical techniques. Proponents point to artifacts from the region, intricate gold-plated objects where the adhesion is so fine and uniform that some argue it defies explanation by traditional fire gilding alone. Yet, the opposing view is pragmatic. Skeptics argue just as forcefully that the jar was simply a secure storage vessel for precious scrolls. The copper cylinder, they say, was a protective case for a rolled parchment, the iron rod its core, and the asphalt a seal to keep out moisture. The acidic residue, merely the remains of the organic scroll itself, decayed over centuries. This is the core of the mystery, a clash between an extraordinary interpretation and an ordinary one. The jar itself provides no clear answer, no hieroglyphic label reading battery, so we are left with a profound and haunting question. If it was a battery, what was it powering? A single cell produces only a faint tingle, but linked together in a series, these jars could have generated a significant charge. Could they have been used for medical purposes, a form of ancient electrotherapy to numb pain, a practice documented much later by the Romans using electric fish? Or were they part of a religious ritual, creating a mysterious, invisible force to awe temple worshippers? The secret here is not just the object, but the knowledge it represents. Electricity is not a modern invention, it is a fundamental force of nature. The ancient world was observant, brilliant, and empirical. Is it so impossible that in their experiments with metals and acids, they stumbled upon this phenomenon? The tragedy is that if such knowledge existed, it was never codified, never passed down in a way that survived the collapse of empires, the burning of libraries, and the relentless drift of the desert sands. It became a secret not by intention but by oblivion. The Baghdad Battery sits in a museum now, silent. It holds a potential that we can measure but cannot prove. It whispers of a parallel path of discovery, a branch of ancient science that withered and was lost, leaving behind only this cryptic clay jar as a monument to a spark of genius that flickered out, waiting centuries for the world to be ready to see its light again. A copper bracelet on a skeleton can rewrite a continent's story. In the summer of 1971, two men searching for rocks in a remote canyon near Moab, Utah, made a grim discovery, a human skeleton lying exposed on the ground. The local sheriff was called, assuming it was a modern murder victim, but something was off. A single, heavy copper bracelet was still encircling one wrist bone, a style utterly unfamiliar. The remains were sent for analysis, and the results sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Radiocarbon dating placed this individual, dubbed the Moab Man, at over 8,000 years old from the early Holocene period. This was not just old, it was potentially revolutionary. For decades, the dominant theory for the peopling of the Americas was the Clovis first model. It held that the first humans crossed the Bering Land Bridge from Siberia around 13,000 years ago, then moved south through an ice-free corridor, spreading rapidly across the continent. Their signature was a distinct fluted stone spear point. The Moab Man, at 8,000 years old, was not necessarily older than Clovis, but his location and his copper artifact suggested a complexity the simple model could not explain. It hinted at a settled, sophisticated culture in the American Southwest far earlier than anyone had believed, one already working metal. The discovery was met with fierce skepticism. Critics argued the dating could be contaminated, or that the skeleton was actually a much more recent Native American burial that had been disturbed. The debate grew even hotter 18 years later. In 1989, just 60 miles from the Moab site, another skeleton was discovered, this one with a single, beautiful green malachite bead placed with it. Malachite Man, as he was called, was also dated to a similarly ancient time frame. Two separate finds in the same harsh desert landscape, both with non-stone artifacts suggesting trade or advanced craftsmanship. Together, they formed a secret whispered from the dry earth. The mainstream archaeological establishment held firm to Clovis first, viewing these Utah finds as outliers, anomalies with flawed evidence. But a growing number of researchers saw them as crucial pieces of a much larger, more complex puzzle. They argued these skeletons were evidence of pre-Clovis cultures, groups that may have arrived in the Americas by different routes, perhaps by boat along the Pacific coast, thousands of years before the ice-free corridor opened. The desert, in its perfect, dry preservation, had safeguarded not just bones, but a profound challenge to a historical narrative we thought was settled. These individuals were not supposed to be there, not with those artifacts, not at that time. They represent a ghost chapter in the human story of the Americas, a secret history of migration and adaptation written in bone and copper and stone, waiting in the silence for us to finally listen. But copper and bone are not the only materials that hold ancient memory. In the shadow of a far more famous necropolis, another secret stands in silent circles. The Al-Ula Valley in northwestern Saudi Arabia is a desert canyon of breathtaking beauty, a winding corridor of sandstone cliffs that has been a crossroads of civilizations for millennia. Most famously, it is home to Hegra, also known as Madain Sale, the spectacular southern capital of the Nabatean kingdom, a sister city to Petra with over 100 monumental tombs carved into the rock. Yet, scattered across the surrounding highlands overlooking this grand city of the dead, is an even older enigma. Here, standing against the wind and time, are dozens of mysterious stone monuments. They are not towering obelisks but low, rectangular pillars of local sandstone, some arranged in deliberate, haunting patterns. The most striking are the mustatils, those vast desert rectangles we explored earlier, but alongside them are smaller, more intimate formations. Some stones stand alone as silent sentinels. Others are gathered in careful circles or long, processional lines. To walk among them is to feel a profound shift in scale, like discovering a smaller, more personal version of Stonehenge erected under an Arabian sun. These are not the works of the Nabateans, who came much later. Radiocarbon dating of animal offerings found at these sites suggests they were erected in the 6th millennium before the Common Era, over 7,000 years ago. That places their creation in a time when this desert was a grassland, a green Arabia teeming with life. So what were they for? The leading theory points to the sky and the spirit. Archaeologists believe these were ritualistic sites, possibly for communal gatherings and animal sacrifices to an unknown deity or deities. The discovery of chambers within some structures containing cattle horns and skulls suggests a cultic practice centered on a bull, a powerful symbol of strength and fertility in many ancient cultures. But there is also a compelling astronomical possibility. The precise arrangements, the long avenues, and the circular patterns could have been used to track celestial events, marking the solstices or the movements of important stars. For a pastoral people whose lives were governed by the seasons and the rains, such knowledge was not just science, it was survival. These stones may have been a calendar, a temple, and a social anchor all at once, a place where scattered tribes could unite under a shared cosmic understanding. For centuries, these monuments were known only to local Bedouin tribes and a handful of explorers. Their secrets were guarded by the desert's remoteness. But that is changing dramatically. As part of Saudi Arabia's ambitious Vision 2330 project, Al-Ula is undergoing a massive transformation into a global tourist destination. Archaeologists are now working at an unprecedented pace, surveying and excavating sites before development continues. With each dig, new standing stones are catalogued and new insights into this prehistoric culture emerge. This modern rush is a double-edged sword. It brings funding, technology, and global attention, finally pulling these secrets into the light. Yet it also forces a delicate race against time to study and preserve them before the landscape changes forever. What we are witnessing is a rapid and sometimes urgent re-evaluation of Arabia's ancient past. These silent stone circles prove that long before the incense caravans, long before the rock-cut tombs of Hegra, this desert was home to a sophisticated, connected, and deeply spiritual people. They looked to the stars, they built monuments to their beliefs, and they left a legacy not in gold or grand facades, but in the humble, enduring language of stone. A map drawn on gazelle skin holds a coastline that should not exist. In 1513, Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis compiled a world map, noting he had consulted source charts from the time of Alexander the Great, including those held in the legendary Library of Alexandria. His work is a stunning artifact of its age, showing the coasts of Europe, Africa, and the recently discovered Brazil with remarkable detail. But it is the southern edge of his map that ignites a firestorm of controversy. There, sketched below the Atlantic, lies a landmass with bays, rivers, and mountains. Piri Reis labeled it, but the critical portion of the map is lost to a tear. For some researchers, this land bears a haunting resemblance to the coastline of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica, a continent that would remain officially unknown to the world for another 300 years. The implication is staggering. It suggests the mapmaker had access to knowledge of a land buried under miles of ice. The standard historical timeline makes this an absolute impossibility. Antarctica was first sighted in 1820 by a Russian expedition. Its coast is perpetually locked in a frozen sheath and has been for millions of years. So how could a 16th century admiral possibly chart it? One radical theory posits that Piri Reis was working from far older source maps, drawn in a distant antiquity when Antarctica's coasts were indeed ice-free. This would push back the clock of human exploration or cartographic knowledge to a prehistorical era, a time of advanced seafaring civilizations whose records were later gathered in repositories like the Great Library of Alexandria, only to be scattered and lost. The desert in this scenario is not the Sahara but the sands of time, burying an entire epoch of global discovery. Skeptics, however, offer a far more grounded explanation. They argue the controversial landmass is not Antarctica at all, but a distorted, incomplete representation of South America's eastern coast, perhaps merged with a speculative southern continent, a common cartographic convention of the period known as Terra Australis. The map's rivers and bays could correspond to the Rio de la Plata and other inlets, stretched and misshapen by the limits of contemporary exploration. This debate is more than an academic quarrel over old parchment. It strikes at the heart of how history is written. Do we accept the map as evidence of a catastrophic gap in our records, a secret thread of knowledge that survived only in fragments? Or do we see it as a brilliant but flawed product of its time, a patchwork of accurate report, sailor's legend, and educated guess? The Piri Reis map is a Rorschach test drawn in ink and ambition. It forces us to confront a haunting possibility that our past may be filled with silent chapters, their pages preserved not in libraries but in the memories of deserts that once were seas and on coastlines that have been frozen shut for eons. What other continents, lost to ice or time, might still be waiting in the margins of an ancient chart? The silent stones of Al-Ula speak of a deep human need to build for the gods, a need that appears to have ignited far earlier and in a place far more barren than we ever dreamed. Our 17th secret takes us to a windswept plateau in southeastern Turkey, a landscape of arid hills and dry plains that feels every bit as harsh and isolating as any desert. Here at a site called Göbekli Tepe, we find a mystery that does not just rewrite history, it shatters the foundational story of civilization itself. Unearthed in the 1990s, Göbekli Tepe is a vast circular temple complex built from massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing over 10 tons. Its carvings are breathtaking, a menagerie of foxes, scorpions, vultures, and lions rendered with artistic skill. But the truly staggering fact is its age. This site was deliberately constructed around 12,000 years ago, a full 6,000 years before Stonehenge and a staggering 7,000 years before the Great Pyramids of Giza. This places its creation squarely in the pre-pottery Neolithic period, a time when humanity was supposedly made up of small, nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers, constantly on the move in search of food. According to the traditional narrative, civilization progressed in a logical sequence. First, humans discovered agriculture, which provided a stable food surplus. That surplus allowed people to settle in permanent villages. Only then, with settled life and specialized labor, did they have the time, resources, and social organization to build monumental architecture for religious or communal purposes. Göbekli Tepe turns that sequence completely on its head. Here we have the most sophisticated monumental architecture of its era, built by people who had not yet domesticated plants or animals. They were hunter-gatherers who somehow organized themselves to quarry, transport, and erect these colossal stones, and to do it with stunning artistic vision. So how and why did this happen? The leading theory points directly to climate and catastrophe. This period, around 12,000 years ago, was the end of the last ice age. The world was warming, but the transition was not smooth. It was punctuated by a sudden, vicious cold snap known as the Younger Dryas, a 1,000-year winter that returned glacial conditions to many regions. In the already arid landscapes of the Near East, this would have been a time of extreme stress. Game animals become scarce, wild food sources dwindled. In this crucible of survival, the theory suggests something revolutionary occurred. Scattered bands of hunter-gatherers facing a common existential threat may have been forced to cooperate on an unprecedented scale. Göbekli Tepe, then, might not be a temple built by a settled society, but the very engine that created society. The act of coming together to build something monumental for their gods could have been the catalyst. It required planning, communication, and the sharing of labor and resources across groups. This collaborative project may have established the first complex social hierarchies, roles, and shared identities. The need to feed the large gatherings of workers could have even spurred the first experiments with cultivating wild grains, planting the literal seeds of the agricultural revolution that would follow. This makes Göbekli Tepe not just a religious site, but potentially the birthplace of civilization as we know it. Its existence is a secret that forces a profound question. Did the builders of Göbekli Tepe, or the knowledge they represented, originate from even deeper in the ancient past, perhaps from peoples who thrived in now-vanished green phases of the Sahara or Arabian deserts? Or did their descendants, carrying this new model of social organization, later disperse into the world's great deserts, taking their skills and beliefs with them? The site was deliberately buried around 10,000 years ago, filled in with tons of soil and debris, as if to preserve it for a future age. It stands as a silent, defiant monument to a forgotten dawn, a proof that the human drive to create, to believe, and to come together in the face of a harsh world is far older and far more powerful than we ever imagined. Göbekli Tepe reveals a society built around belief, but another, even more widespread desert structure speaks to a far more primal need, the relentless pursuit of food. From the high plains of Armenia to the rocky plateaus of Jordan and Saudi Arabia, the desert floor holds a secret pattern invisible to anyone standing upon it. Only from the vantage point of the sky does the truth emerge, a sprawling network of ancient stone walls forming colossal geometric shapes. These are the desert kites, and they are among the world's oldest and largest hunting traps. Their name comes from their rough aerial resemblance to child's kites, with long, converging lines leading to a central enclosure, but there is nothing playful about their purpose. These are monuments to survival, engineered with a chilling, efficient brilliance. The design is deceptively simple, yet executed on a staggering scale. Hunters would construct low stone walls, often just high enough to be visible to panicking animals, in a vast V-shape that could stretch for miles across the open landscape. These walls acted as giant funnels, guiding herds of gazelle, oryx, or wild asses toward a central point. That point was not an open field, but a deadly conclusion, a walled enclosure with a deep pit or a sudden cliff. The animals, driven by hunters from behind, would surge into the narrowing funnel, their instinct to stay together sealing their fate. In their panic, they would plunge over the precipice or into the killing pit where they could be harvested en masse. The scale of these operations is almost incomprehensible. Some kite complexes cover dozens of square miles, with guiding walls running for over 3 miles in length. Their distribution is equally vast, with tens of thousands identified across the Middle East and Central Asia. This was not a local technique, it was a shared technological secret across an entire region, passed down and refined over generations. Dating these structures is difficult, but evidence suggests some were built and used as far back as 9,000 years ago, placing them firmly in the Neolithic period. This timing is crucial. It means the people who built the desert kites were contemporaries of, or even predated, the builders of Göbekli Tepe. While one group was erecting pillars to the gods, these hunters were reshaping the very landscape into a machine for survival. Their existence forces us to rethink the capabilities of early desert peoples. Constructing a single kite required an immense coordinated effort. It meant moving thousands of tons of stone, understanding animal migration patterns with intimate precision, and organizing large groups of people to act in unison during the hunt. This points to a level of social planning and communication we rarely attribute to prehistoric hunter-gatherers. They were not just reacting to their environment, they were manipulating it on an industrial scale. The kites are a brutal but undeniable testament to human ingenuity under pressure. In an arid world where protein was scarce and unpredictable, these structures guaranteed a seasonal bounty. A single successful drive could yield meat, hides, and bone for hundreds of people, perhaps enough to sustain a community for months. This allowed for larger, more stable populations in regions we would consider marginal today. The desert kites are more than ancient traps. They are the blueprints of early society in the harsh lands. They show us that long before cities and writing, humanity had already mastered the art of large-scale project management, turning the empty desert into a collaborative, deadly, and profoundly effective pantry. A book written by the devil would need to be strong indeed. The Codex Gigas, or Giant Book, earns its name. Created in a Bohemian monastery in the early 13th century, it is the largest surviving medieval manuscript in the world. It stands nearly 3 feet tall, 20 inches wide, and a staggering 9 inches thick when closed. Its 310 pages of vellum, made from the skins of approximately 160 donkeys, weigh over 165 pounds. It is a physical behemoth, a fortress of knowledge. Within its covers, it contains a complete Latin Vulgate Bible, historical works by Josephus, medical texts by Hippocrates and Galen, a chronicle of Bohemia, and various spells and formulas. It is, as its legend claims, an attempt to compile all essential human knowledge in one volume. But its most famous feature is a full-page, chilling illustration of the devil himself, a horned, green-skinned creature alone on its page. This image spawned the name it is most commonly known by, the Devil's Bible. The legend behind its creation is a tale of desperation and supernatural pact. A monk, condemned to be walled up alive for breaking his vows, promised his brothers he would write a book containing all the world's knowledge in a single night to atone for his sin. As midnight approached and the task proved impossible, he prayed not to God but to the fallen angel Lucifer, offering his soul in exchange for completion. The devil is said to have finished the manuscript, adding his own portrait as a signature. It is a perfect medieval horror story, explaining the impossible scale of the work. The true secret of the Codex Gigas, however, is not its infernal origin story, but its miraculous journey through time. How did this colossal, singularly famous book survive 7 centuries of European history, a period riddled with wars, plagues, religious upheaval, and outright plunder? Its resilience is a mystery of preservation rivaling any desert artifact. For centuries, it was a prized possession of the Benedictine monastery at Podlages. But in the chaos of the 30 Years' War in the mid-17th century, the entire imperial treasury of Prague, including the Codex, was looted by the Swedish army as a war trophy. It was carried off to Stockholm, where it remains in the National Library of Sweden. Its survival through that violent transfer alone is remarkable. Consider the threats. Fire was a constant danger in wooden medieval libraries. Damp and mold could destroy vellum in years, yet the Codex endured. Its very size and unique appearance may have been its salvation. It was too famous to discard, too recognizable to melt down for its precious metal clasps, and too awe-inspiring to destroy. It was treated not just as a book, but as a curiosity, a trophy, a supernatural artifact. This instinct to preserve the exceptional mirrors the secret of the desert monasteries. Think of the dry, stable caves near the Dead Sea, where the Essene community hid the now famous Dead Sea Scrolls in clay jars. The arid, constant climate acted as a natural time capsule, preserving fragile parchment for 2,000 years. The Codex Gigas, while traveling a different path, benefited from a similar human impulse to safeguard the unique and the sacred from the consuming fires of history. It was protected first by monastic reverence, then by royal avarice, and finally by scholarly custody. Its pages, though stained by time, remain legible, a massive bridge to the medieval mind. The devil on page 290 may draw the eye, but the true wonder is the book itself, a monument to the human hunger to compile, to know, and to save that knowledge from the void. In a world of constant loss, its continued existence is the real miracle, a testament to the fragile, stubborn chain of custody that keeps the past alive. While some cultures built monuments to reach the heavens, others found their salvation by digging straight down. Beneath the semi-arid plains of Cappadocia in central Turkey, the earth opens into a secret so vast it redefines the concept of a city. This is Derinkuyu, an entire civilization turned inward, a labyrinthine metropolis carved not from stone, but from the region's soft, malleable volcanic rock known as tuff. To stand at its entrance is to stand at the mouth of a different world, a world of profound darkness and astonishing ingenuity. The scale is almost impossible to grasp from the surface. Derinkuyu descends over 200 feet into the earth, a warren of 18 distinct levels, though many believe even more remain undiscovered, blocked by ancient collapses. At its peak, this subterranean fortress could shelter an estimated 20,000 people, along with their livestock and supplies, for months on end. This was not a temporary hiding hole, it was a fully functional, self-sustaining city built in reverse. Every detail of Derinkuyu was engineered for long-term survival and security. The most critical challenge was air. How do you keep tens of thousands of people and animals breathing deep underground? The answer was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, over 50 ventilation shafts, some stretching all the way to the surface. These carefully placed ducts provided a constant flow of fresh air to even the deepest chambers, a natural air conditioning system that also doubled as wells, tapping into the underground water table far below. Speaking of water, the city had its own freshwater sources, secure from surface contamination. There were stables for livestock, cellars for storing massive quantities of food, wineries and oil presses, communal kitchens, and even chapels with carved crosses adorning the walls. The social and spiritual life of the community continued, protected by a mountain of rock, but the true genius of Derinkuyu's defense lay in its gates. Connecting the various levels were narrow, sloping passages that could be sealed in an instant by massive, circular stone doors. These slabs, weighing up to 1,000 pounds, were rolled into place from the inside, blocking the corridor completely. Each door had a small, central hole, not for peering through, but for a more lethal purpose. A defender could thrust a spear through it at any would-be invader trying to break in. The entire city was designed like a series of airlocks, each level capable of being isolated to contain any breach. So who built this underground marvel, and what were they hiding from? While the earliest chambers may date back to the Hittites over 3,000 years ago, Derinkuyu reached its peak complexity in the early medieval period, likely expanded by Byzantine Christians. The region of Cappadocia was a crossroads and thus a battleground, repeatedly ravaged by invading armies from all directions, from Arab caliphates to Mongol hordes. For the vulnerable agrarian communities on the surface, Derinkuyu was the ultimate panic room. At the first sign of danger, the entire population could vanish underground, sealing the entrances hidden in surface dwellings or within courtyards. They would disappear from the face of the earth, leaving invaders above to find only empty villages and silent fields. The desert-like surface of Cappadocia, with its extreme temperatures and scarce resources, became a deceptive facade. The real life, the real civilization, flourished in the cool, constant dark below. Derinkuyu is a stunning lesson in adaptation. It proves that ancient peoples did not merely endure harsh environments, they mastered them by reimagining the very notion of shelter. They turned the landscape's greatest weakness, its soft, crumbly rock, into its greatest strength. In a world of threats from above, they found profound security by looking not to the horizon, but to the ground beneath their feet, carving out a secret world where they could wait and pray and live until the danger passed and the surface was safe once more. A city hidden underground is a testament to human ingenuity, but some of the desert's most perfect patterns have no architect at all. In the sagebrush deserts of eastern Washington state, the earth itself has formed a question in the soil. Scattered across the arid landscape are thousands of peculiar, uniform mounds. They rise like gentle, grassy waves from the flat earth, each one roughly 6 feet high and 30 feet across, spaced with an almost mathematical regularity. These are the Mima mounds, and for over a century they have dared scientists to explain their existence. From the ground, they create a hypnotic, rolling terrain. From the air, they resemble a colossal honeycomb or the dimples on a golf ball stretched across hundreds of acres. Their perfection is the heart of the mystery. Nature is rarely so neat, so uniform. What force could have stamped this identical pattern across such a vast expanse? The leading theory points to a tiny, industrious architect, the pocket gopher. These solitary rodents are relentless diggers, creating complex underground tunnels to search for roots and bulbs. The hypothesis suggests that over thousands of years, generation after generation of gophers, each building its own burrow system, slowly pushed soil and rocks to the surface. The uniform spacing, according to this idea, is a result of territorial behavior, each gopher claiming its own mound-sized domain. The cumulative effort of countless small creatures persisting for millennia could theoretically sculpt the landscape on this grand scale. It is a compelling story of persistent effort achieving monumental results, but not everyone is convinced. Skeptics of the gopher theory point out that the mounds contain layers of soil that seem too organized, and that the sheer size and density of the formations are unmatched in areas with high gopher populations today. This has led to other, more dramatic explanations. One suggests the mounds are the result of seismic activity, that during powerful earthquakes, the shaking of water-saturated soil could cause it to bubble and settle into these regular domes. Another, more haunting possibility links them to human hands. Could these be the remnants of vast, ancient Native American burial or ceremonial sites, their original forms eroded by wind and rain over centuries into these gentle, natural shapes? While archaeological surveys have not found widespread evidence to support this, the idea persists, adding a layer of cultural mystery to the geological puzzle. The truth is, the Mima mounds may represent a secret where multiple answers are correct. They might be a hybrid creation where initial seismic or permafrost patterns were later modified and maintained by generations of gophers. This natural secret shows that deserts hold puzzles formed by the slow conversation between time, life, and elemental forces. They are not built in a day or by a single plan, but emerge from the patient, cumulative whispers of the earth itself. The mounds sit in silence, a testament to the fact that some patterns are so vast and slow in their making that we, in our brief moment, can only stand before them and wonder at the collaboration between claw, quake, and century. A different kind of secret was found among the most famous ancient texts in the world. While the other Dead Sea Scrolls are fragile sheets of parchment or papyrus, one stands utterly apart both in form and in message. It is a document hammered from pure, thin sheets of copper, inscribed with letters punched into the metal. This is the Copper Scroll, and it contains not prophecies or prayers, but what appears to be a straightforward inventory of buried treasure. It lists 64 separate caches hidden across the Judean desert and surrounding regions. The quantities are not modest, they are the stuff of empire, describing tons of gold and silver, along with precious incense and sacred vessels. According to the scroll's tally, the total value in today's terms would be in the billions. It reads like a meticulous accountant's record for a king's ransom, a literal treasure map etched in enduring metal. The immediate, tantalizing question is, whose treasure was it? The most compelling theory links it directly to the Great Second Temple in Jerusalem. In the year 70 of the Common Era, Roman legions under Titus besieged and sacked Jerusalem, burning the temple to the ground. Jewish historians of the time wrote that before the final collapse, priests and rebels managed to hide the temple's vast wealth, its sacred relics and its monetary treasury, to keep it from falling into Roman hands. The Copper Scroll, discovered in a cave near the Dead Sea in 1952, seems to perfectly fit this desperate moment. It could be the official, secret record of where that unimaginable wealth was buried, a last-ditch effort to preserve the soul of a nation. This interpretation has launched a century of treasure hunts. Armed with the scroll's cryptic directions, explorers and archaeologists have scrambled across the harsh Judean hills, searching for landmarks like the Cave of the Column or the Tomb of the Absalom's monument. They have dug at the base of ancient dams, scanned dry riverbeds, and probed forgotten cisterns. Yet not a single bar of gold, not one silver coin from the list has ever been found. The failures are as consistent as the directions are specific. This relentless lack of success has given rise to a counter-theory, one that suggests the Copper Scroll is not a literal map at all, but an allegorical text. Perhaps the listed treasures were not physical but spiritual, their hiding places metaphors for virtues or theological concepts. Or the scroll could be a piece of folklore, a legendary wish list of a nation's lost wealth, committed to copper not to guide but to memorialize. The metal itself adds another layer of mystery. Copper was expensive and difficult to work. Why use it for a simple list unless you intended that list to survive for ages, far outlasting perishable parchment? The act of choosing copper screams of permanent, vital importance. So the secret persists coiled in the desert sun. Is the treasure real, still lying in a forgotten crevice, its guardians long gone? Or is the true treasure the mystery itself? A story of hope and resilience so powerful it had to be written in a material that would never fade. The Copper Scroll does not give up its answer. It sits in a museum, a cold, hard puzzle, its promises and its directions still waiting for someone to finally understand the landscape of 2,000 years ago and to see what everyone else has missed. A single boulder in a West Virginia riverbed holds a secret that looks manufactured by giants. Known as Waffle Rock, it is a massive sandstone block, and one of its faces is covered in a startlingly precise geometric grid. The pattern is a perfect series of deep, intersecting lines forming recessed squares, so uniform and sharp it appears to be the imprint of a colossal waffle iron pressed into the stone. The immediate human assumption is that this must be the work of tools, a deliberate carving from some unknown culture. Yet geologists confirm the rock is ancient, part of a sandstone formation laid down over 250 million years ago, long before any human hands could have shaped it. This small, localized puzzle becomes a perfect case study in how we confront the unexplained in a stark landscape. The most accepted scientific explanation is a fascinating natural process called boxwork weathering. Here is how it works. Over eons, mineral-rich water seeped through cracks in the sandstone, depositing harder veins of minerals like iron oxide within those fractures. Then the surrounding, softer sandstone slowly eroded away, worn by wind, water, and time. The harder mineral veins resisted this erosion, leaving them standing in relief, forming the raised grid we see today. It is a kind of natural negative where the skeleton of the rock's own history remains after the flesh has worn away. Another theory points to biology rather than geology. Could this grid be the fossilized imprint of ancient tree roots? In swampy, prehistoric environments, a mesh of roots can create a similar interlocking pattern in the sediment that later turns to stone. When the roots themselves decay, they leave a hollow grid that fills with harder minerals, creating the same resistant structure. This would make Waffle Rock not a monument, but a ghost, the shadow of a primeval forest preserved in mineral form. But then there is the more speculative whisper, the one that arises when natural explanations feel insufficient to our pattern-seeking minds. The sheer perfection of the grid, its right angles and consistent depth, feels intentional. Could it be the trace of something else, the fossilized impression of advanced machinery from a civilization so lost we have no other record of it? Perhaps it is the footprint of a great weight, or the mark left by a tool or vehicle we can no longer comprehend. This idea, while lacking evidence, speaks to a deep human instinct. In a desert or any isolated, ancient place, we are surrounded by the immense, patient work of nature. When we stumble upon a form that echoes our own creations, our own love of order and geometry, we cannot help but project a maker. Waffle Rock is a mirror. It shows us our own desire for meaning, our need to see the hand of intelligence in a universe that often operates on scales of chance and time we can barely fathom. It reminds us that the desert's greatest secret might sometimes be the story we tell ourselves while standing before its silent, enigmatic stones. A forest turned to stone stands in silent defiance of time. In the painted desert of northeastern Arizona, the Petrified Forest National Park holds a secret of breathtaking transformation, a landscape where trees did not just fossilize, they became jewels. Scattered across the arid badlands are the remains of colossal conifer trees from the late Triassic period, over 225 million years ago. But these are not mere impressions in rock. They are solid logs, some over 100 feet long, shattered into enormous, cross-sectioned segments that gleam with a shocking internal fire. Crack one open and you find not wood grain but a dazzling mosaic of amethyst, citrine, smoky quartz and jasper. This is the crystal forest, and its creation is a story written in water and minerals, a process called permineralization. Imagine a giant tree falls in an ancient river swamp. Quickly, it is buried under layers of silt and volcanic ash, sealed away from the oxygen that would normally cause it to rot. Then, groundwater rich with dissolved silica, likely from nearby volcanic eruptions, begins to seep through the buried log. This mineral-laden water slowly, molecule by molecule, infiltrates every single cell of the wood. The silica precipitates out of the water, filling the empty spaces within and around the plant cells. Over millions of years, this silica crystallizes into quartz, perfectly replicating the original organic structure in stunning, colorful stone. The vibrant hues come from trace minerals, iron creating reds and yellows, manganese yielding blues and purples, and carbon providing deep blacks. For early explorers and the native peoples who lived here long before them, these crystal logs were a profound mystery. How could wood become stone, and such beautiful stone at that? To cultures like the Puebloan ancestors, these glittering logs were sacred, often seen as the bones of giants or weapons of the gods, left behind from a great battle in the mythological past. They incorporated pieces of petrified wood into their tools and ceremonial objects, believing the material held great power. Later, 19th century settlers and railroad workers, stumbling upon this field of shattered gems, were equally baffled. Some thought they had discovered a vast, ancient city made of polished stone pillars destroyed by a cataclysm. The truth, however, reveals an even greater secret than magic or myth. The Petrified Forest is a fossilized climate record. Those towering rainbow logs are undeniable proof that this stark, painted desert was once a lush, tropical rainforest, crisscrossed by winding rivers and populated by crocodile-like reptiles and early dinosaurs. The very silica that preserved the trees came from massive volcanic eruptions to the west, whose ash both fertilized the giant forests and, in the end, helped bury them. This landscape holds the memory of a world that no longer exists, a verdant paradise turned to stone and then exposed again by eons of erosion. The desert, in its relentless dryness, became the perfect curator for this ancient art. It stripped away the overlying layers, revealing the crystallized heart of a forgotten world, a permanent monument to the fact that no environment is forever. The sands here whisper a powerful truth that today's barren expanse was yesterday's thriving jungle, and that the earth itself is in a constant, slow-motion dance of transformation. The desert's final secret is not a silent stone or a hidden city, but a voice. In certain dunes across the world, from the Sahara to the Gobi, the sand itself begins to sing. When the slope of a particular dune becomes too steep, it triggers a small avalanche. But instead of a soft whisper, the sliding sand produces a deep, resonant boom, a low-frequency hum that vibrates through your chest as much as it reaches your ears. This is the phenomenon of singing sands, and it is one of the planet's most haunting natural concerts. For centuries, travelers encountering this sound spun tales to explain it. Marco Polo attributed the booming to evil desert spirits. Nomads in the empty quarter spoke of buried bells tolling beneath the dunes. Others believed it was the mournful song of jinn or the groan of the earth itself. The sound is that powerful, that alien. It demands a supernatural explanation. Science, however, listens for a different kind of music. Researchers have determined that the song requires very specific conditions: sand grains of a nearly uniform size, a certain level of humidity, and the precise quartz content found in desert sands that have been polished by wind over millennia. The leading theory is one of synchronized vibration. As the avalanche begins, the grains of sand slide in a cascading layer over the stationary dune beneath. This motion causes the grains to rub against each other, creating vibrations. If the grains are all roughly the same size and shape, these tiny vibrations can become synchronized, locking into the same frequency like a vast natural amplifier. The sound waves then bounce between the surface of the sliding layer and the harder dune beneath, magnifying the hum into that profound, earthy boom. Yet, even with this understanding, the full mechanism remains elusive. Laboratory experiments can replicate the sound, but they cannot perfectly capture the scale and complexity of a living dune in the open desert. The exact role of atmospheric pressure or the subtle differences in sand composition from one singing dune to the next continue to puzzle physicists. It is a reminder that some of nature's simplest performances have the most intricate orchestrations. To stand before a booming dune is to witness the desert speaking in its own ancient language. It is a voice built from a trillion polished grains, from the dry air and the relentless pull of gravity. This sonic secret transforms the desert from a place of silence into a place of profound vibration. It is the landscape's final lesson that even in the starkest emptiness, there is a deep and resonant music, a hidden song waiting for just the right moment to reveal itself to those who walk across its shifting, whispering skin. From singing sands to silent, subterranean cities, the deserts of our world hold a spectrum of secrets that defy simple explanation. We have walked through lost metropolises like Iram, traced the giant prayers of the Nazca people, and stood before the impossible age of the Sphinx. We have seen how aridity preserves, from the Caucasian faces of the Iram mummies to the cryptic inventory of the Copper Scroll. We have witnessed ancient ingenuity in Petra's hidden waterways and the chilling efficiency of desert kite traps, and we have confronted artifacts that hint at forgotten knowledge, like the spark of the Baghdad battery or the cosmic cataclysm that forged fields of yellow glass. Each mystery, from the colossal rectangles of Arabia to the buried temples of Göbekli Tepe, reveals a fundamental truth: the desert is not an empty void. It is a vast, open-air archive. Its dryness is a preservative, its isolation a lock, and its shifting sands a curtain that only occasionally parts to show us what lies beneath. These stories remind us with humbling clarity how much of the human story remains unread. Our historical timelines are not fixed, they are fluid, constantly rewritten by a single discovery in the dust. Every unanswered question, from the fate of Cambyses' army to the origin of the Voynich manuscript's flora, is an invitation. It is proof that the map of the past still has blank spaces, territories marked only by the phrase, "Here there be mysteries." So the journey does not end here. Which of these 25 secrets resonated most deeply with you? Was it the haunting beauty of the petrified forest, or the terrifying genius of Derinkuyu's underground gates? Share your thoughts and your own favorite desert enigmas below. If these glimpses into the unknown have sparked your curiosity, consider subscribing. Our next exploration into history's greatest puzzles is always just over the next dune.